Hello everyone, welcome to UFO Enigma. I'm Ron Rickey, your host. Well, as you can see by watching the TV shows lately, everybody's been keeping an eye on the sky. And as of this taping here today, the great space spectacular of the SL9, the Shoemaker-Levy comet that's pelting the planet Jupiter, should just be starting to wind down just about now, though even the latest that I heard that about an hour from now there's going to be still another good-sized hit around 3:30. So the photos that these programs have been showing, they've just been this side of fantastic. It's really getting people all interested again into the space station, and it seems really uncanny that this should have occurred on the 25th anniversary of our moonwalk too. The coincidences are unbelievable. And if you remember on the last show now, I was sort of wondering out loud if there was going to be a sort of a big upswing in UFO sightings, because of the fact that, you know, everybody, with or without a telescope, has sort of been out there watching, looking at the night sky, trying to see something that's happening on Jupiter. Of course, you know, this doesn't mean that the UFO reports will suddenly start up and that people with telescopes in their attics and stuff are going to really start seeing close-up shots of UFOs. Now, generally, telescopes, especially the large observatory ones, they're usually focused on objects millions and millions of miles away. Now, for instance, say that a UFO, even a large one, should pass, you know, cross the path of the field of view of a big scope like the one in Palomar. Say that it went right by the thing, and within a mile, 2 miles, even further, it more than likely wouldn't even show up on the scope because the fact that it's too close. And you're going to find that's going to be the case with most of the scopes. I doubt very much you'll see any UFO telescope sightings, but you never know. Now, this isn't to say either that that someone running one of these telescopes in the process of waiting for a hit or waiting for the cameras to work and stuff, if there was one in the area, there might be interest from UFOs, and there might be visual observations. Time will tell on that. Okay, now getting back, they even got it shortened down now to the SL9. I guess this thing is really getting some good solid strikes in on the planet, and from the pictures I saw, it's sort of making permanent scars on the planet. I mean, it's leaving a residual, lasting effect. The scopes show up there, and the spot where the thing hit is still showing. It's leaving like a scar. Now, some reports stated that the plumes from these things shot up as high as 6,000 to 1,000 miles now into the atmosphere of Jupiter. Now, that's quite a bit considering our space stations and whatever maybe orbit around 90, 100, 125 miles, 600 to 1,000. That's quite a blast. So, even though the UFOs, even though if they were within, I was sort of thinking out aloud, watching TV again myself, would it really be nice, a telescope sighting, if the UFOs sort of congregated around the planet itself, and they happen to catch pictures of the planet, the explosion, UFOs, but that would really be wishful thinking, so I'll leave that at that. Now, getting back to the planet there, Jupiter, some of these programs made a little comment here that brought a couple of old shows that I did. Now, they were speculating what the hits would be like if they were on Earth. Now, this was quite interesting. The first piece, which was a small one, I would imagine, was the smallest one. Scientists speculated that if it did hit the Earth, it would create a crater something in the area to 12 to 40 miles now in diameter. Now, the area of devastation would be approximately 200 miles in diameter. Now, just to get this into perspective, let's say the comet landed in Springfield. Let's use our local area here. Okay, that means the city of Springfield would be gone, and the area of destruction would cover just about all of New England. So you can see what kind of things could be going on if this was happening here. Now, like I said, the devastation here would be unbelievable, but Jupiter is a big planet, so we don't know. Now, in watching some of these stories, I'm sort of surprised that none of these shows as of yet have mentioned a strike that we had within this century. Now, I did a couple shows on it. It was the famous Tunguska explosion, and according to what I read, the destruction capabilities were equal to what's happening right now. Now, Tunguska, I did a couple shows, but this will bear repeating. This famous explosion took place in Siberian Russia back in 1909. And I'm going to cover it just a little bit so we can get an idea of what we're talking about here. 1909, a flaming object came swooping in low over the Indian Ocean. Now, upon crossing over the Asian continent, I think it went right over India, this thing which streaked across the sky, at first probably everybody thought it was a meteor. It came right over the Asian continent, and it made a veering turn over Siberia. Now, to this day, controversy rages in these UFO books. As one scientist says one thing, and another ufologist will say everybody has their pet theories. The controversy is whether the thing was a meteorite or was it an intelligently controlled spaceship that spun in out of control and blew up over Siberia. Now, the object itself was viewed by thousands, if not millions of people just before the explosion. And so remote was the Tunguska area that it actually took 10 years to mount an expedition to go in and check this thing out and view the crash site. Now, when this expedition did get to the area of Tunguska, it's on the Tunguska River, and the damage they saw was mind-boggling. Hundreds and hundreds of square miles of Siberian forest was totally flattened. And from what I read, what the interesting part was that scientists did discover that on the epicenter they found all of the trees flattened in a sunburst pattern, radiating out from the epicenter. And these scientists also speculated that the object exploded above ground. It didn't hit the ground and make a crashing, piling in type of a crash. It exploded over and flattened everything equal distant all the way around. And if I can just go to one side of it, that sort of, to me, takes out the meteorite theory, which, you know, I was going to throw out anyway, you know. I just pro-UFO. So now this later gave rise now by some of these scientists later on now. We're talking 1919 that the expedition did get in there. That this ball of fire was a huge spaceship powered by an atomic engine of some sort. Now, I've done shows too trying to deal with the proposed, suggested propulsion systems of these, what these things might be powered by. And that when this thing did come in with something wrong with it, its atomic engines exploded. And to go back, and this is what the theory that I believe in. I don't believe it was a fireball, a meteorite. Well, it's still too early now to see if there's going to be an increase in UFO sightings. I haven't got. I've been checking the newspapers, and actually everything is concerned with mainly the planet and the comet SL9, but nothing so far on UFOs. But I will be getting some news clippings in, so we'll be seeing. And I suppose while you're waiting in line at the supermarket, those tabloids are going to have all kinds of stuff. So there'll probably be space babies born during hit on Jupiter or something like that. So just keep your eyes open, and we'll do the same here. I'll be scanning those tabloids myself while I'm in the under 14 aisle. Okay, now let's get on with some other UFO sightings. All righty, here's one that I couldn't get on the last show, and I thought it was kind of an interesting little sighting. It was here in the United States, and I ran out of time, so I'm going to finish off on it today. Now, this comes out of the News Tribune of Tacoma, Washington. The date line was May 1st of this year, and the headline read, it's quite long, Mount Rainier area youth has close encounter in foothills. I would imagine it was the foothills of Mount Rainier. Now, I sort of, this struck me because I was interested in it because of its locale, Mount Rainier. If you recall, this is the actual site of the first modern UFO sighting that was reported back in '47 by Kenneth Arnold. Now, this is a date that lives in infamy in UFO annals, June 24th, 1947. This started the whole thing. Even though there were reports before that, we consider this the modern side of it. Now, I'm going to give you just a thumbnail breakdown of this article because it's quite lengthy. And, okay, here we go. The incident was reported by an 18-year-old teenager guy, and he was driving home in his pickup truck. Now, I have a couple of questions which I'll bring up a little bit later as I'm going through this. He was driving along. Now, all of a sudden, his engine just died, and his dash lights went out. Okay, and we've heard that particular malady that happens when a UFO is present many, many times. Now, for some strange reason, the headlights remained on, and suddenly this teenager spots a huge 9-foot-tall creature about 30 feet in front of his truck. Now, this boy describes the creature as looking like Sasquatch, but with bat wings. I mean, we're really getting to this one now. After watching it for a few seconds, the creature started flapping these big bat wings, and all of a sudden his truck started rocking. He was making such a turbulence with these wings, it was rocking the truck even at 30 feet away. And the thing finally got up enough takeoff speed, took off, and he started flying slowly towards Mount Rainier, the mountain itself. Now, as Mr. Bat Squash, which they called him later on, disappeared from view, the truck's engine suddenly fired back into life, the dash lights went back on, and the boy recovered his senses from being stunned by all this, and he sped home and woke up his sleeping parents. On interview now, his mother said he was in such a traumatic state that when he came in, she knew he wasn't lying. The hair on his head was still standing up straight. He was so scared. So shortly after that now, they met with a neighborhood fella that, a local man who knew the local woods like the back of his hand, and they persuaded him to go back out to the spot where the boy spotted this huge creature. Now, when they got there, they found nothing. So now this is when the boy more or less coined the term bat squatch. Now he further described this 9-foot tall creature as having blue tinted fur, yellow eyes, tufted ears, sharp fangs and claws. Now wouldn't he make a nice blind date? So okay. This is quite a story, and but I have two questions on it. The first one is why the headlights stayed on when the engine died and the dash lights went out. I mean, electrical system in a vehicle, if something's going to nail it, it's going to wipe the whole system out. That's one part there that I couldn't really make out. The second question I had was why really no UFO was reported, physical UFO, near the humanoid himself. Generally, especially I've covered stories like the Flatwoods sightings down in West Virginia, and when these monsters were seen, generally there was UFOs spotted not too soon or even before the actual encounter, which sort of makes me believe that maybe this might have been a mechanical device itself, something that would have, maybe its power source interfered with the electrical system in the truck, and when it did take off, I don't think something that big with short wings, I don't know if that could really take off, but it had to be powered by something. But that sort of wraps that little story up, and I'm sure they're probably going to have more on that one, so I'm going to be watching the newspaper clippings for more on that one. Okay, now I'm doing a little research here. I don't know if I can get this whole thing squeezed in, but I can get it started anyway. And let's see, here's a story that I can do some correlating. It's a past and a present. Okay, now the present article come from a newspaper in London, England. This was the Daily Mail. Now, the date line is April 15th of this year, and the title is Why They Never Cottoned Onto the Thing. And it was more of a story about a man admitting a hoax. But it's interesting because it's about Warminster, England. And I think I've mentioned the town before, but let's get on with the story anyway, and I'll continue it. Now, I'll give you a little background. Warminster is, I don't know, probably a little outskirt town in England. And I'm going to use a story from Saga magazine for my past part. This was the summer issue UFO report from Saga of May of '74. Now in '74, they were also doing an article. This article was 10 years old when they did it then. The actual story was Christmas of '64. So we're going on for 30 years here. Okay, Let's get back to Warminster now. The saga title was The Town That's Haunted by Flying Saucers. Now, Warminster, according to the saga article, this was the Gulf breeze of England back in 1964, right around Christmas time. This little town is also famous because it's situated very, very close to Stonehenge. Now, Stonehenge is readily recognizable by many readers since it's a very big tourist attraction in England. Now, until recently, Stonehenge was thought to be a sacrificial temple used by the Druids. Now, the Druids were this is an all but extinct religious sect. I think there are a few practicing Druids, I don't know, but for all intent and purposes, they're sort of out. But later on, scientists did find that the huge stone megaliths far predated the Druids by thousands and thousands of years. And according to the story that I read, they were erected by this lost civilization. But being clever little scientists today, they looked at it, and soon they figured out what this thing was used for. The large, now circular stones, I think there's a picture of it right here. Huge, huge stones. To this day, they don't know how they moved them, and especially the pieces, the top pieces, got them up there. They weigh tons. This large circular stone was used as an astronomical calendar. And by using various spots on the structures, various patterns were set up permanently, they could figure out when a full moon would be, eclipses, they could figure the day, the month, the year. They used it they more or less used it like we use a calendar today, which is quite intriguing. Now, undoubtedly, scientists say that there were sacrifices carried out, and I tend to agree with that. You know, they were probably pagans and stuff like that. So the region is rich in UFO folklore that goes along with all the stories of Stonehenge. Now, but what I'm going to try to do here is compare the two articles now, which span 20 years, that cover a story that's 30 years old. Okay, now let's get to the Daily Mail one first. This is the one that I first saw, and this made me start going back into my old magazines and stuff. Now, the article was Why They Never Cottoned Onto Things. This is the London Mail, and this concerns a photograph that has been considered real. It's been considered an authentic picture of a UFO for the past 30 years. Now, evidently, the photographer, Mr. Roger Houghton, now he's a retired print worker. He recently confessed that the UFO picture was a fake. And it was pretty good. They packed a lot into this little article, and it was pretty interesting. The idea was cooked up by two men, Mr. Houghton and another fella, in a local pub one night. And the UFO was apparently nothing more than a milk bottle top, a cotton reel, that must have been what they call a spool, and a button. Now, these items were probably glued together to form the shape of a UFO. Having done this now, they went out to a local field with their bogus flying saucer and a trusty little camera. And while one man kept dropping the model, the other one would snap a picture of it as it was falling. Now, they were very careful to make sure the camera angle just captured the bogus UFO and clear sky. They didn't want anything in the background. In other words, they didn't want a tree, something to use as a focal point. All they wanted was a UFO and a nice clear sky. You know, you got to hand it to these guys. In fact, it sort of reminds me a little bit of some of the jokes that are being played in the cornfield stories, which means there are hoaxers, but don't necessarily count out the fact that something did not land in these fields. Okay, so Mr. Hooton now, to this day, the article went on, he doesn't know why any of the so-called experts didn't figure out the picture right at first. You know, he thought the thing he made looked kind of stupid. You know, it looked like kind of dumb. And but he said it fooled him at first, and it kept on fooling him, and it would still fool him if he didn't tell him. Now, I'm going to run out of time. We'll have to continue this to the next show, but I'll just keep... Mr. Hooton claimed that it was just a joke that got out of hand, and once the photo did make the Warminster Journal, he said the object itself, the picture, just took on a life of its own. And Mr. Hooton said he confessed to the hoax to John Spencer, who was the vice chairman of the British UFO Research Organization. And Mr. Spencer had used this photo in 2 of the books he had written. In fact, he claimed that Mr. Spencer now, this picture here, when he first saw it, he was 11 years old. This was the photo that got him interested in UFOs. Now, Mr. Hooton claims that he doesn't believe in flying saucers, but he does believe in UFOs. And that sort of ended that particular article in the Daily Mail. Now, this sort of left me with a little bit of an uneasy feeling. I'm going to get into this on the next show. I felt kind of bad because it makes you think that this was the only thing that happened in Warminster, and that the whole thing was phony. But I have books, and I've got a lot of material of what actually did happen on that sleepy little town in England. And it wasn't all because of one little picture. It didn't even start with a picture. It started with noises. It started with rumblings. It started with people having terrific pains in their ears when they heard hums over their houses. They heard things like chains and thorns being dragged over their rooftops. So, you know, I'm sure that any big UFO flap has its hoaxers. So next time we're going to see the real thing. Until then, I want you to keep looking for them UFOs. Bye-bye.